isn't it wild that now we pay for the things that used to be free that we would just do normally? So like 100 years ago, there were no cell phones, there was no computer, there was no social media. So like we were much more present. So it's almost interesting. I was hearing you say that. I was like, wow, it flipped. Like now that's so abundant in our life. It's so normal that now we pay for experiences to disconnect.
Right.
It's wild.
Born in 92 on the block with the Sharks. Come from a different cloth, y'all would get ripped apart. You want it diamond, then you gotta get it in the dark. We dropping nuggets like Carmelo went to Rucker Park. Now we eating from state to state, we scrape the plate. I put my eggs in a basket, took a leap of faith. I took a chance, now we grow and see the impact. Decoding Success with special guests, now let's bring Matt.
Welcome, everyone, to the most Zen podcast of 2024. I should sit up and I feel like a news reporter right now. The boys and I are here in the studio after a nice float therapy session. And this is something that we've been talking about doing for a little bit. Just an idea that was actually thrown around by, I think Andrew Meditz was the one that came up with it at one of our roundtables.
So. Yeah.
And now we're seeing it through, but I got Phil Massey here, Anna Reese is here.
Glad
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
The most relaxed I've ever been here.
That is a fucking fact. I'm glad that there was a little bit of a drive from where we were to here.
You wouldn't have been able to host.
To help you sober up.
I originally, you know what's funny? Yes. But originally, I believe I was saying this to you, Phil. I was like, you know what? Maybe, and shout out to Vessel Floats in Greenpoint. Really incredible job that they do. Very hospitable and whatnot. Going to make sure that the address pops up here and the name of the business pops up here on YouTube if you're checking that out. But all of that being said, like the original thought was maybe we host it in their lobby.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like that was the original thought. And to be honest, I'm glad that's not the case.
We had a very slow show.
I was a mute.
Yeah.
I was a legit mute for like 30 minutes.
And what did you say Matt looked like?
You looked high.
I
no other way to put it.
I literally felt high, but like in a good way. Like, I mean, sure, I've smoked weed, I've been high before, but like you're just like high on your own supply.
No.
For as cheesy as that sounds, but like for a full hour, my breath never broke rhythm. Without force too, So like you're floating.
Yeah, I don't know if you could have hosted right after that
No.
session by the looks of you.
Well, you had a coffee right before you went in.
That's usually I have a coffee before I go most places, but yeah, that's accurate.
I told him not to have coffee before, but like when I saw you come back with the coffee, I wasn't gonna be like, yo, dude, don't drink that because it was already drank.
Yeah, I think I probably could have done without.
It does impact the experience, as does eating.
Yeah, I can see that. Actually, I'm glad I ate, but the coffee was just extra.
Yeah.
Because you're like, now you're like hyper-focused on nothing.
Yeah.
And explain as well what, if people don't know what floating is.
Yeah, so essentially, and there's numerous different ways to float, and there's no perfect way to do it either, right? But I believe the three of us, we all did sensory deprivation.
Yep.
Yes.
No lights, no sounds, right? So essentially, you go into a tub, and it's rather large. Like we're bigger guys. Like for us to be able to float, like you could bump up against the side, but you don't feel like claustrophobic. So you get into this tub. It's about, I want to say 1 foot of water, give or take. It's probably 12 inches of water.
Probably.
It's not much. And
It's not
When you
much.
step in there, you're like, is this going to actually do anything for me? Is this going to work?
Exactly.
I know it works.
You get into the tank, you put your butt on the bottom, and then next thing you know, you lay back and you're not on the bottom anymore. You're floating to the top because there's 1 ton of salt within that tub. And you lay there in nothing. No sight, no smell, touch, sure. You do feel the water. Like they say total sensory deprivation. But as I was in there, I was thinking about it. Like I hear myself breathing.
Right.
Yes.
And I also feel the water. So like there's...
And do
It's
you
close.
feel the sides of the tub? Like
Yeah.
when I was floating, I was knocking into the side a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
I felt like
would-
palm.
I would push off a little bit. I started off on the left side. I'm looking up. Then I'm like in the corner by the tub. And I'm like, all right.
Funny you say that because one of the things that happened to me during the float, my eyes are closed. Like, even though I'm laying in pitch black, I still have my eyes closed. And one of the things that happened was my eyes are closed. It's actually toward the end of the float. I mean, listen, you don't know that you have 10 minutes left or 40 minutes. Like, there's no concept of anything.
Yes.
Legit, which makes it trippy as fuck. But at one point, I have my eyes closed. I'm just breathing, and I'm thinking that I'm moving left. I'm like, oh, the current in this tub is moving to the left. So I'm like, oh, I'm moving left. And then next thing you know, my shoulder goes up against the right side. My right shoulder goes up against the right side of the tub. So I was like, you just have no concept of like what's happening.
Yeah, it really did feel like Pong. I mean, I know I just mentioned that earlier, but like that's what it kind of felt like. You're bouncing back and forth, and I felt like the wacky inflatable tube man at one point too. Just like my arms were kind of going everywhere, but it was nice. I'm curious how you guys were laying there. I always, for the most part, I lay like this with my arms up behind me because that expands me for like better breathing. And to be honest, it's comfortable as fuck too.
It is.
Just like laying with your arms above your head or your hands above your head, kind of like, your touchdown, right? Or field goal or, whatever. How were you guys laying there?
Originally, I had my arms out straight like this. So kind of like my front delt is like above the water. And this is my first time floating, by the way. So about, I would say half of my ear underneath the water, other half's above. And I'm getting used to the sensation. They make you put earplugs in, as you guys know. So I'm getting used to that. And it's just so chill. And I started like this with my arms out. And then I felt like, I was telling Ant before, I felt like a little tense around the back of my neck. And it's just from probably like stress, like carrying tension up here. So I'm like, all right. I just told myself, like, Phil, you got to surrender. And I just threw my hands back. And for clarity purposes, I'm about 5'6". These guys are over 6 foot each. So I'm thinking as I'm doing it, I'm like, can these guys do what I'm doing right now? So I just did a big X like that. And I was just chilling. It also helped me because I stopped banging into walls. Because I'm going left and right. And that was awesome. And just to bring it back, my first time floating. So you sit down, like Matt said, your butt's on the floor, and you're thinking like, I mean, I floated in water plenty of times. So I'm just thinking like, all right, how easy is this? And you had told me before the session, you can't F this up. Like,
there's no way of doing it perfect.
You can do it. Right. So I just throw myself back. And it was one of the coolest things. I literally felt the water carry my butt up, and I was just chilling. So for anyone who's like afraid to float, afraid to swim, like you're chilling. And then in that process, I would have thoughts race to my mind, and I would tell myself like, just chill, just surrender. And at one point, I was playing kind of like the talk track in my head of like the last week and like decisions. And then I told Ant before, like, then I actually just started praying. I actually just started praying. And for me, I got like an immense feeling of gratitude. That's what I felt deep in the float. My family, my loved ones, my life, my health, my business. It just brought it all front and center. So that was my experience of it all.
Yeah, we'll dive into that further. This was your first time. This was your second time.
Right.
I'm curious. So just to bring everyone up to speed here, and again, shout out to Vessel Floats. When you go there, it's not just you walk in, strip down, jump in the float tank. Like there's a whole experience involved within it. Part of it is being like setting an intention with your dose, right? And I think some of the doses were happiness. What were the other ones? Euphoric, dream.
And then
there was like a cleansing one.
Yes.
And I think it started with a V, but I forget the name. So like there were 4 to choose from. And then on top of it, you get to choose the type of float that you want to do, which is what we were just talking about. The 3 of us chose sensory deprivation, but there were also, there's another category to pick from, which is essentially like a sound bath and or a guided hypnosis meditative journey. And then on the back end of it, you also get, a post-float drink to continuously enhance your experience. So all of that being said, what did you guys choose as your like intentional dose before going into it?
Oh yeah. I think we all chose something different, correct?
That's what you said. Yeah. I chose happiness.
I chose dream.
Chose euphoria.
Okay, so we all chose something different.
Yeah, I remember dream. The little description on the the menu was a dream will help you get into like a deeper meditative state. It had like you had told me before, it had like ashwagandha root, just different things in the tincture. And I thought it was so cool. They bring over the shot glass, really good looking glass. I was like, damn, I want this at home.
It's fancy.
And had like a blue watery like look, and then drops the tincture in and does a little stir. And I noticed for mine, it stayed blue. But how did yours come out when he stirred it?
All right, so interesting. So mine came out like lavendery purple.
Yeah.
I experienced something in the tank, which I don't know if you guys did. This is your first time. You've done it several times. This is my second time doing it. But so the drink, as you mentioned, yours was blue, so was yours. Mine was purple. I don't know what was in there, but at some point in the float, like this is like the halfway point. I kid you not. I'm like, did I hit the light on the side? I saw purple like everywhere, like in the tank. I'm like, what the hell? And then I was like looking up, and I just kept seeing purple. I'm like, oh, I probably hit the light. And then I closed my eyes, and I still saw purple, and I couldn't stop seeing purple for about, I don't know, 5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
Pretty wild. I've never seen color.
Yeah.
In a sensory deprivation tank where you're seeing nothing but pitch darkness.
You access the part of your brain, and I don't know the scientific term for this, but I was actually talking about it with Anthony Mendola. When you start to see the colors, and when you start to, so for example, one thing that I experience that's similar is like a kaleidoscope effect, where like your eyes are closed. You know, like as a kid, I don't know if you ever did this, but like I did it on purpose. I would just rub my eyes so intensely, and then next thing you know, like you're seeing a whole bunch of things. Like that happens in the tank as well. And from what I know, that means you're reaching a certain part of your brain that isn't necessarily, or activating a certain part of your brain that isn't being activated in just like daily life.
Wow. I don't know what that was, man, but I was like, I'm in there, I'm floating. I'm like, all I see is purple. I'm like, are the guys seeing this? What are they seeing? What colors are they seeing? What was in that drink? I had no idea, but that was a trip to see purple everywhere. And then a second time, this is unrelated. So that eventually like subsided, went away. I got, I wasn't saying my vision back, but I guess I lost my vision again. And then I looked up top, and I kind of started seeing like little, like almost kind of think like Star Wars, where they're in the, Millennium Falcon, and they're like going off at jet speed, at turbo speed. Like I kept seeing like lights dashing, and I'm like, all right, what is going on here? So I don't know if you guys saw that or whatever. But
you had your eyes open?
Open, yeah.
Did you have the ceiling on?
They were not on.
Okay.
Yeah. Because then I kept thinking, like, did I hit the button when I was like floating all over the place? But no, because it eventually went away, and I didn't touch a thing.
That's interesting.
That reminds me of something called RAS. This might not be the thing you would talk about with Ant. Reticular activating system. So my dad just got a car recently, and he says to me, since I got the car, I feel like all I see are white BMWs. He got a white BMW. He's like, don't you notice they're everywhere? And what it is now it's making your brain privy to the fact of what you just got. Like you're now noticing. So if you just got a red Honda, you're going to see red Hondas. It's like maybe that was what you were seeing. Maybe something different, the kaleidoscope thing. But it's just whatever is fresh in your mind that you just got, you're seeing it everywhere. It's all over the place because now your brain is focused on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say I went into it because you were kind of talking about like your intention, and you were like telling us in the beginning, like this is how you should walk into it, what to expect, how to like set your mindset for this. So the first time I ever did one of these, it was the day before I recorded for my Kickstarter commercial. And it was actually in 2019 that I recorded it. And I had so much on my mind. Like now I've been, I love doing this. We're in front of cameras here. It's like, it's kind of like second nature now. But at that point in my life, I'd never really done that. So I'm like, oh crap, like what's going to happen? And I had a lot going on in my head, and it helped chill me out. But I thought about the video the entire time. This time around, I thought about like what's like just a few things that are currently happening in my life, like things I want to accomplish, things I have to do. And then I'd say about like, I don't know, 1/5 the way in, I stopped thinking about anything and everything. And I was just, it's actually exactly what I wanted. I was just very present. I was just kind of there. I was just being. So there was no like deep revelation or deep thought, or I wasn't like fixated on any one thought whatsoever. I was kind of just fixated on nothing, but I shouldn't say nothing. It was more on being. And that's what I got from it. And that was like my big takeaway, which I enjoyed, I'd say more so this time around than even the first time when I had something I was like hyper focused on.
Yeah. I love that. I think I can relate to a couple of things about what you're sharing. I actually experienced the kaleidoscope effect a little bit. Nothing crazy, right? And I think this had to have been close to like my 25th time floating. I did it a lot in 2020. And every single time is a different experience. And sometimes in the past, what I found myself doing was trying to replicate the experience, trying to go in there and be like, oh, I really need to get so relaxed that I fall asleep again. That's only happened one time. Or I need to go in there and I need to see the colors and see, all of that stuff. That's only happened a handful of times. So, all of that being said, today I'm like, you know what? Whatever happens, happens. Like, sure, you set the intention, you have the dose, you do all of that stuff, but whatever happens, and then we'll digest it here on the podcast. Like, that was how I went into it. I did experience the kaleidoscope. Not a lot. I would probably say less than a minute worth of it, right? And you're in there for 60 minutes. So like less than a minute worth of it where, I had my eyes closed, I'm laying there, and then next thing you know, kind of the same thing. I was only seeing white. Like, I wasn't seeing like a whole range of colors. But then, interestingly enough, I said to you guys, like in the car on the way here, my mind was going. Like, my mind was just moving. And I'm like, all right, one thing that I did extremely well during the float was watch my thoughts pass as clouds as opposed to latch onto them. Right? And I said to myself, well, Matt, when you're not floating, when you're just sitting on the couch and your mind is going, for you to get off of your thoughts, it's so easy to just pick up your phone and block it out by scrolling or texting or this or playing Roller Coaster Tycoon, which I've been doing successfully for the past 3 weeks straight, and I have an amazing amusement park. Congrats. But like, all of that being said, it's so easy to just disconnect from that thought when you're not floating. But the floating actually, it essentially forces you, and I know force is like a weird word to use when we're talking about surrender and stuff, but it doesn't allow for you to escape the thought. And that was pretty cool to just like sit there and experience thought after thought. And listen, was I perfect with it? No, there were definitely some thoughts that would pop up. Dude, I thought about everything. I thought about work. I thought about, this is going to sound crazy, but this is like where the mind goes. I envisioned being at Starbucks, chaining up my bike, someone trying to steal it, and like how I would go about getting it back.
Tell us that story.
Like, bro, my mind was absolutely everywhere. But, in the few instances where I was latching onto the thoughts and like playing out the scenarios, which were all future focused for the most part, instantly I was able to say to myself, once I realized what I was doing, let it pass. And then it would pass, which was pretty cool.
Enjoy the moment is what I had to tell myself. Like, just enjoy. And I think one of the coolest, most serene things was hearing my breath underwater. So I was trying different breathing techniques. So one by Andrew Huberman is like, you breathe in through the nose. It's like a long, and then pierce your lips. So like it's a very small opening and 8 seconds out. Yeah. So I was doing that.
Is that 4-7-8?
There's another one that I was trying like that, the 4-7-8.
4-7-8.
I noticed that when I do that, I have a hard time with the 7 because like my body wants to breathe in for longer than the count of 4. Like, that's just me. I don't know. Like, I kind of wish it was 7 or 8. Yeah. So I did try that though, and that would help me become Zen. It was a distraction, like you said. It normally we can't distract ourselves in the tank. Like, there's nothing to do. I had the little stars on above me. I didn't know how to shut them off, so I was seeing little. It looked like the top of a Rolls Royce car.
It did.
And I'm seeing little stars, and I'm like, okay. And I was thinking, I was like, I wish I had a blindfold right now, but it's my fault. So next time I'll turn it off. But I was practicing breathing, and just hearing that was helping me get into a state of just nothing. Yeah. Literally sensory deprivation, nothing. Yeah. So it was cool. It was real, real cool. And at one point too, I started thinking of you because Ann was right next to me.
You guys are floating together.
His tank.
3 guys, 1 tank.
3 guys, 1 tank. Don't do that at home. Yes. I started thinking of Ann because I was thinking of how recently you've gotten into Joe Dispenza.
Yep.
And in his Blessing of the Energy Centers meditation, you basically envision that you're up in space and there's nothing around you. There's blackness all around you. And I started thinking, I was like, I want to give this guy that meditation and play it for me while I'm in the float tank and just pretend there's nothing around me. that's how I felt. Totally
That could have
zen.
worked, actually. I feel you on that. Having just read that book, and like that was the perfect setting for it. And back to what Matt said earlier too. Like if you're trying to meditate and you're like not in it, you can just stop meditating and do nothing, or you can just go on your phone. And like, how often do we really do nothing? But we're also present doing nothing. Next to never.
Never.
You know. And then like if you're in the tank, like you can be in thought, out of thought. Doesn't really matter. You're there. You're there for 1 hour. So you have no choice but to either go with it, stick with your thoughts, abandon them. But like you are present. There's no way to not be. So I do value that because it's so rare to get a moment in today's day and age where just like you have to force yourself to be there and there's no phone distraction.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it takes a little getting used to of just being like, okay, I'm here. I'm not in bed. I'm not sleeping. It's just like it almost felt like purgatory in a weird way because you're really nowhere. You're somewhere, but you're nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you're just kind of like wobbling around. And I'm like, this probably is what purgatory is. At least how it was described to me felt like. But a lot of time to think.
A couple of things. Number one, you guys made me feel very bad just now because you're making fun of my thought.
What, the Starbucks?
Just
the bike?
You guys don't have crazy thoughts? I mean, I wouldn't even call it crazy.
I wanted to hear the story, actually.
No, I can't say. I can't say it
just,
publicly.
What I was just thinking is
The cops were involved.
Oh, God.
Okay, so it ain't the MySpace gang group thing.
No.
What I was just thinking when you were saying that is, isn't it wild that now we pay for the things that used to be free, that we would just do normally? So like 100 years ago, there were no cell phones, there was no computer, there was no social media. So like we were much more present. So it's almost interesting. I was hearing you say that. I was like, wow, it flipped. Like now that's so abundant in our life. It's so normal that now we pay for experiences to disconnect.
Right.
It's wild.
It's honestly really challenging as someone that wants to achieve in life to not do anything. Personally, as of late, I've been finding ways to do what we did today in other forms, right? So the float therapy is great. You cannot bring your phone in the float tank. And if you can, like you're wasting your money, you're ruining your experience.
Right.
But like, who can float every day outside of Tom Brady, who has it in his house? You know, like who can float bro, it's expensive. You know, it's if it's not convenient in regards to location, right? There's so many factors that go into it. But I've been experiencing similar stuff even just by doing yoga, which is something that I've been doing a lot more often. I've been doing yoga at least 2 times a week, you know, and in those moments, for example, when the going gets tough in yoga, where you're holding that pose, for me, it's tough at least. You know, there's women in this class that literally just like crush everything. And I'm like, yo, good for you. I'm over here dripping in sweat. But like when the going gets tough, for example, yesterday I was in a yoga class. I started to feel the sweat. I started to feel the heart picking up, like the beats per minute picking up. And I literally said to myself, you could leave. Or like you could be done with this. And I was like, why? Like I'm looking to escape, right? Like still looking to escape that present moment. Even playing basketball. Basketball is another form of this to my extent, or in my belief at least. Like when you're so ingrained in running up and down the court, grabbing a rebound, passing the ball out, taking the shot, doing this, doing that, you can't be thinking of, like, you have to be present, right? So I've been trying to find ways that bring me into the present. And I don't want to say, I keep going back to the word force, but like, you kind of are forced to be present in certain moments like that, you know?
There's a guy.
No, go for it.
There's a guy on YouTube that check him out, Dr. Mishka K. It's called, I think, The Healthy Gamer is his YouTube. So he was a Harvard psychologist. Now he's got a private practice. Amazing guy. And he talked about something that I said in the past. When you are so present in that moment, to me, it's the definition of peace. And how he described it was, peace is one-pointedness. It's literally when your mind's not left, right, it's on one point. And we notice that when we do that, we do everything to the best of our ability. We're just locked in. So how can you experience more moments of one-pointedness? Like you were just saying, that's the float tank. You can't do anything otherwise. You're locked in, and you paid for this. Like, you're gonna ruin the experience if you just leave.
Yeah.
You know, you're in a yoga class, like you paid for it. You're around these other people, like you're gonna ruin the experience if you just leave. I think that's part of human nature. Is like, no matter how healed or evolved you are, there's going to be times that you just want to duck left, duck right, like staying in that moment. And I think doing these experiences just compound the reps to stay locked in the future moments. So like
100%.
check him out if you have a chance to. He would be great on the podcast
Yeah,
too.
for sure. And I think, you know, just to round out that thought, it's like it can be uncomfortable to be in the tank, especially if you're not comfortable sitting by yourself. Right? If you're not comfortable experiencing the thoughts that pass through the mind, if you're not comfortable experiencing the emotions you may have suppressed or repressed, like those will come up in those moments. Like even if you're just sitting on the couch, they'll come up, but the couch has the outlets for escape.
Right.
You know?
I'm curious. So I have a buddy that cannot, he's very successful, but he hates massages. He doesn't like being in one place at one time. He hates acupuncture. And I think he would probably hit the button if he was in the float tank to leave early. Like he wouldn't be able to handle it. Have you on your show had any guests, obviously you've had a slew of different successful guests, that like the things that we talk about, whether it be sitting still, meditation, float tank, that they would be like, not for me. I could not go down that road. I can't handle it. You don't have to drop names. I'm just wondering, did you come across that at all?
To be honest, I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think, you know, everyone's form of a meditative state is different. So I think people just find what works for them, and that's kind of what they go with. It's not necessarily like, you know, sitting on a meditation pillow type of thing and, you know, you start levitating. You know, some like I always reference Drew here, Drew Medits. You know, he always talked about his pops and, you know, smoking a cigarette was his meditative state, right? So like, I feel like everyone we've had on the show for the most part kind of found what worked for them more than anything. But like the stillness key, like the stillness part of it, I feel like that's tough. I know plenty of people like that.
Right.
I'm one of them too, to an extent, right? Like just being still at times, like I'm definitely one of the people that just like, no, I gotta move, you know?
We're wired for productivity. Like we're told growing up, if you're not productive, you're a waste of space.
Yeah.
It's like that's wired in us. And then now we're trying to come back to, like we said, the point of 100 years ago where we just did this because this was plentiful. Now we're actually backing into it. We're paying money for these experiences. But it's helping us achieve bigger levels of life.
Mm-hmm.
And to take this time out is not easy to do. Sometimes you make it once you do it, you're like, oh, that wasn't that hard. But I think of like my pops, for example, like for many, many years, he did not want to touch meditation because he didn't want to lose his edge. And then I understood where he was coming from. He's like, I'm an on the go person. I get a lot of things done. I don't want to meditate and like kind of lose my edge and not be as motivated. And then I started doing it. I'm like, it's the complete opposite of that. You're actually going to gain an edge. You know, instead of being, you know, reactive to everything, you'll have a little buffer time to respond. And yeah, you know, float tanks aren't readily available for everyone to attend, but I mean, and you've gone so many times. What are some profound thoughts that you've gone post float tanks? Maybe not this one, but what are some major things that you've taken from doing 25 plus floats, 30 plus floats?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I did a lot of it in 2020. Right? I mean, you couldn't do anything here in New York in 2020,
right.
But floating was one of the things you could do.
Solo,
right? You're just solo. You're in there. It was very isolated. You know, if there was another person, I think. I mean, I could tell you some reactions that I've had. I've cried in the tank, like, you know, thought tracks that have brought, like, kind of like what you were saying, Phil, in regards to like the gratitude and stuff. Like there have been moments like where I've been with myself and that gratitude has come on to the point where, you know, tears were rolling down my eyes. You know, Vessel, I might have to invoice you for adding salt into the water through my tears. You know, that's been something that's happened. I think another thing, you know, and while this isn't a direct thought, but just like overall, it gives you a really solid opportunity to like reflect on your own growth and progress. And that's definitely been something that was pretty prominent for a while, especially in 2020, which was a bit of a crazy year, obviously from a global perspective, but also from a personal perspective for me. Carried into 2021 a little bit as well. But man, there's been so much. So it's hard to say like this was a thought, but I think I've experienced the full range of emotions in the tank.
And I feel like the three of us, and we didn't discuss this, by the way, prior to us coming here on purpose, 'cause we wanted to kind of get all our thoughts here on the pod. It was hard.
That was hard.
That was difficult.
I wanted to say stuff in the car. It was about an hour drive, and I was just like, I'm just going to repeat myself, so let me not say anything.
It's like seeing a movie together and then not commenting on it. You know what I mean? It's just like kind of weird to not like discuss it, but we're doing it now. But I was wondering if we had a lot of the same thoughts. So like, I heard you guys touch on like, okay, where am I currently at? I think we were thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, did we all think about like something in our career at some point?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Did we all think about like something to do with a relationship or the women in our lives?
Yes, I did.
Same. Did we all think about like where are we going, next steps?
Yeah. 100%.
Isn't that kind of funny? Like we didn't discuss any of this prior to, and all these things kind of came full circle, and we had different experiences, yet they were all similar in our own unique ways.
I've raised this question. It would be interesting where my mind would have went if that session was longer. Because the first 15 minutes, I wasn't comfortable. I was anxious. As I said earlier, I was holding a lot of kind of weight in my neck. And even though you don't have to do anything to float, I'm kind of just like almost trying to prop myself up. So I was like, just chill. Then I threw my hands back. Then the next 15 minutes, it went from thoughts about just chilling there in the tank to thoughts about life, future forecasting and things like that, and just kind of a little all over the place. And once I hit what I assume was the halfway point was when I was like, you know what? Then I went into prayer. I was just thinking like, first it was reciting certain prayers, then it was my own. And then the last 15 minutes was when that gratitude piece came forth for me. And then I heard, welcome, your float's over. Thank you for it. And I'm like, oh.
Now get out.
Get out. And I'm just like, all right, I was wondering if this would go an extra 15 or half an hour, maybe on my second one, I wonder where my mind will be, because I won't have to think about that first 15 minutes or that first half an hour.
Yeah.
I was ready for it. Like I was content. Like I'm like, okay, when it ends, but I'm with you too. I'm like, where could this have gone?
Yeah.
What colors would I have seen? If this lasted another 15, 30, 60 minutes, who knows? And then when I get out of there, I'm like, yeah, I could have used some more actually. Yeah. Like I was done. I had my fill and my fix, but I would have loved to see where that went. You're my fill.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. You got me jealous.
My fix.
So in 2020, like I said, I was going often. I had an unlimited membership. And the owner was very present at that time. His name's Christian. Good guy, went to NYU, like launched this business. Like he's very passionate about it. And Christian at the time, like I said, he was there often. So I would see him often. So I came for my weekly float. I would go essentially every Sunday morning before football started. So I did something good for myself before I, indulged in wings and beer and whatever else. So one particular day, Christian, I go into the tank without telling me, adds an additional 30 minutes. I had dude, as you guys know, there's no concept of time in there.
Right.
No.
So you're walking in and you're in there, like today, for example, I sometimes I say this to myself. I'm like, oh, I must be halfway through, or I must be, 45, whatever, like that's kind of a thought track while I'm in there. But I had no clue that he added that time. It got really uncomfortable. It got because it was by surprise, right? So I feel like if it was by surprise, I would be curious to know how you guys feel about it. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going in there for an hour. I feel like we have, as humans, maybe a little bit less now because we have the clocks on our wrists with an Apple Watch or an actual watch or, the phone in the pocket. I feel like we have within us some sort of internal clock. It's almost like, oh, I want to wake up at 7 a.m. I don't need to set an alarm. I could just wake up at 7 a.m. Like we kind of just know. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what would happen if you guys did it by surprise. Like you go in the tank and then next thing you know, there's an additional 30 minutes and then it's like, fuck, my internal clock's like way off, and then you get out and you realize you had an added 30 minutes.
I think I'd have a different concept of time altogether, especially if I wasn't told. I'd be like, wow, like every second really counts when you're, when you're not distracted or when you're in it. I mean, that would probably mess me up too, because there's so many times where I don't know why I kept doing this. I'm like, yeah, this is probably the halfway point. I think I was wrong every time.
Were you doing that a lot?
Yeah.
I did that. I'm like, I was wondering, how long have I been here? Like, how long have I been floating like this for? And I kept thinking, I was wrong pretty much every single time.
Yeah.
But yeah, extra half hour. I think I'd appreciate more if I knew it going into it.
Yeah.
Because it would screw me up and be like, what is time? I have no concept anymore.
Yeah. I experienced what you experienced, Phil. Like, I think if you're not used to floating, it does take a little bit of time to settle in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a little, like if you're not doing it consistently, like let's just say once a month. If you're not doing it once a month, I think there's a little bit of habituation that needs to happen because you're just like, no stimulation, no phone, no TV, no laptop, no watch, nothing. So I think you need to habituate a little bit. But like you were saying, my last 5 minutes were my most powerful 5 minutes.
Me too.
Throughout the entire thing, right? That's where I started to like access like a deeper thought process on what I was thinking about. And in that moment, I was thinking about, an intimate relationship. And that was where I felt like I was accessing deeper parts of myself and like really getting off the surface. And then next thing you know, boom, it was done. And I'm like, fuck, I wish there was a button to just hit and be like, give me 30 more,
You have your credit card linked up to it and you press it and it's like, build. And then
the voice turns off, the lights stay off,
Yeah. And also too, we didn't mention, like when you walk into this room, there's a room which emulates like a bathroom. And then you have the tank as a part of that room. So the whole thing is very zen because the detail on the walls, the shower, everything is black. It's pitch black. There is no, when I go into the tank, I shut the lights off. It's dark to begin with, to the point where I almost slipped when I was inside. But it's a very zen-like spa experience. I can't say enough good things about it. I mean, it reminded me too, I had this feeling come up for me. I don't know if it did for you guys. Especially, my son's about 15 months old now. And seeing that whole process, that whole, transformation, you realize how comfortable and how much humans love water. We love water. Think about when you step into the shower, a bath, the ocean, the pool. You just access deeper thoughts, deeper codes, right? And I was laying there, and it sounds so simple. It sounds funny to say, but like my son was in water, a water-like consistency for 10 months. Like he was basically an amphibian. He was like a reptile and then you take that first breath of air and it's like, that's why you cry, because your first breath ever. And I'm thinking like how good I felt in water. Now, like I went to a trip, 2017, Sicily, and I'm laying on a beautiful beach in Sicily. It's called Sheffield, was the name of the town. And the tide was low and I'm laying and it's like a foot of water. And I got a flashback to that. And I only did it for like 30 seconds. Here was an hour. So it was kind of like bringing me to that moment before an hour. It was kind of wild what was hitting me, but from the sensation of the water. And what about for you guys?
Yeah, this is the one thing we did talk about. The after you go in the tank, there's like a little private spa for each person, and like the shower just hit differently, for sure. And there is, like, to your point about like humans loving water. I mean, yeah, it's one of the elements, so the natural elements. So like we do connect in a certain way, and there is something that's refreshing. I remember I had was it last summer? I was having like a bad moment, and my buddy's like, dude, I don't really get like that. He's like, I've never seen you like that. He's like, take a shower. I'm like, no. He's like, trust me, take a shower. And I did, and I felt infinitely better. It's just it's the great reset. It's a cleansing. There's something, even if you go to biblical terms like a baptism, so to speak, there is something that connects you with water, the cleansing feeling, and you come out like a new person many times over. So I felt that two ways today. One was the tub or the float tank, and the second was the shower.
That was in Greece, that whole shower story.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. You know what's funny? I'm so glad you brought this up, Phil, because finding our element that we resonate with is so important. So like all of us are talking about water. I realized that in 2018, water was my element, right? And maybe I didn't say that to myself at that point because I was younger. I might not have known it, but like I realized how much water meant to me. We were on a trip in Europe, Phil and we just like hit the ground running hard. Like we were in Paris, we hit it really hard. And by the time we got to the south of France, notice how he brought up Italy, I have to bring up France. When we got to the south of France, I was just like in a constant anxious state. Like I couldn't shake it. I literally couldn't shake it. But every single time I was in the Mediterranean Sea, every feeling dissipated. Every single time. So much so that I remember we were in Antibes and dude, I was just floating in the water. Like just chilling, floating. Got out, was able to sleep. Like incredible how much water impacted me in that moment. It made me realize that same thing, dude. Feeling anxious, whatever, feeling the feelings, hop in the shower, reset. Total, it's incredible. I think everyone needs to find that element for themselves.
What's that Bruce Lee quote? Be water, my friend.
Be water.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful quote.
I mean, we're composed of X amount of water. I personally know people that hate water.
Yeah. If you think about it, every element can either, it feeds us or it kills us, depending on how we use it. So I can drink this water and I have life. Or I could go underneath and I can drown. I can, use fire to help me cook, or I could light myself on fire. Like there's a balance, there's a respect there. I think it's wholesome to really think about. Even water for bathing, for drinking, like it has such uses, but you want to respect it. And I think part of this experience was the Zen-like experience, but the water was a huge thing. I think if I was just laying on like almost like a mat that had like almost like an aqua massage type consistency, it wouldn't have been the same. It was the fact that I'm totally free falling, like just chilling in this water. Wild experience.
Yeah. I'm supposed to go to a sound bath later tonight.
Oh man, double down.
I don't know if I'm going to because like I'm still super chill. It's
Jeez.
like, how much more chill can someone get?
You're gonna wake up in a couple days probably after that.
I would not. Right now, I need a nap. Like, right now, I could use. I don't know if it was the slice of pizza I had or the float. Maybe a combination of both. That slice was very good, by the way. So yeah, I booked the sound bath, sound healing. I think it's called a sound healing, and I did it purposely because like my unlimited membership runs out tomorrow, and I'm like, you know what? Let me get this in while I can. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty chilled out right now.
See how you feel. I mean, the last class you told me you went to, there's the guy that was snoring. So you don't want to.
Yes.
You don't want to be that guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you see how you feel.
Dude, I had major. I know the cool kids are calling them downloads these days, but like, bro, I walked out of there and I was like, holy shit. Kind of the same thing. Like it took me a little bit to habituate. I went in there, I was a little, I don't want to say anxious, but I was just like kind of revved up from a coffee I had. Very sensitive to caffeine, but man, just like there were a couple of thought tracks that were very, very like justifying and just felt like really good. And I was like that felt fucking incredible. For example, like I'm sure you guys could resonate with this, but made a decision recently that went up against the grain of what other people think is right. And like just, I guess, reassuring myself and validating myself for making that decision. Like not everyone's going to see eye to eye. I've always felt like a little bit of a black sheep. So people just don't understand, like I feel like a black sheep is a chosen one. Like you're put on that path for a particular reason. Right. So like that was one of the things that was popping up. So dude, the downloads were fucking wild.
I'm still trying to figure out what downloads are.
Thought tracks.
Okay,
Thought tracks.
right.
Yeah,
Thanks
thought tracks from your perceived higher self. Basically thoughts that only come to the surface when you're zen or one-pointedness, when you don't have a million, because we're always receiving external validation.
Yeah.
If you're not grounded, man, your mind goes nuts. And I experience it still today. Like you just have all this noise coming in left, right, and it's like you can't even make a decision for yourself because you don't even know. You don't trust yourself enough to do so. So when you go in these states of sound healing, floats, meditation, anything of that sort, even a walk in the woods, and it's like just you, like you experience nothing.
Yeah.
That's usually when these quote unquote thoughts come to mind or these downloads.
That's another thing I've been doing too is the walk in the woods. Been doing that every weekend with Draco. Like awesome, just like solitude, just like the break from the city. Funny, I mean, it's in our city, right? Like, but just like that break of being like in the depths of the woods, dude, there's nothing going on. You know, like there's no stimulation. Maybe you hear like a twig under you snap as you step on it, or you know, maybe you hear like the fucking bushes rustle when there's a mouse running by or a bunny or whatever the case is. But that's been awesome too.
Or Draco trying to eat horse shit.
Draco did eat horse shit. He did eat horse shit. What pissed me off the most about it was that he has his spot where he likes the shit in the woods. Like it's reserved for him. So he does his thing. We're doing a pack walk. So like all the dogs keep going. And he's, squatting and doing his thing. And I'm, just cheering him on as a good dog dad would do. And another dog is coming up behind us that was late. So we start walking with that other dog, trying to catch everyone. And, dude, there's horses on the trail. Like, it's pretty dope to see horses. So as we're walking, right in the middle of the path is just like clumps and clumps and clumps of horse poop. Or food. So the woman that's walking the other dog is like, oh, don't let your dog grab that. As I'm going to pull him back from it, because like, dude, dogs see it. They're looking at it. They're interested. Can't even believe I'm telling this story. He goes down. He grabs a clump of poop, but I say, drop it. And he dropped it instantly. So I'm like, all right, we're in the clear. Long story short, the walk finishes. We're on our way out. Now we're, just like in the park, in the beginning of the park. As we're crossing the street, lo and behold, there's another pile. He wasn't leaving this time without grabbing some. He grabbed it, swallowed it without chewing so fucking fast. And I'm like, dude, no kisses for like a week.
Good call.
Like a week. Bro.
Those are the same people who be like, a dog's tongue is cleaner than a human's. We're not eating shit.
You know what's funny? It is though.
How? You just eat.
This is not my expertise, by the way. So
Yeah.
It's not my expertise either, but I'm saying it is so that I continue to believe it is.
That's
so that
fine.
it justifies
Enjoy
me,
those kisses. Yeah, I get it.
Or when you take the peanut butter and you take the spoon and you put it in your dog's mouth and you put it back in the jar and you put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's like, it's love.
Yeah, that I haven't done. But
So when you're talking about woods and on a different talk track, like that's like the therapy for you and Draco and for your dog. For people that don't have access to that, what I've seen. So I saw this guy in the city. He was in he was in the zone, man. He had a tennis ball and he's walking around and he's bouncing a tennis ball. And I could tell he was just like having like that inner monologue. You could kind of tell he was like flowing. And I kind of caught up with him just by chance. And we stopped at a red light. And I go, hey, what's up, man? I go, sorry to interrupt you. I had heard on a podcast that when you bounce a ball, like it opens up different parts of your mind, keeps you creative, and some of your best ideas will come from doing that, and it's very therapeutic. He's like, I've been doing this before there was anything called a podcast before, and he went all into it, like his whole life story. But I go, how often do you do this? He goes, I don't do it every day, but I do it almost every day. And he goes, I've had business ideas come from this. I've had ideas that things I want to do with my children, vacation ideas, have all come from bouncing this ball. So for him, it wasn't necessarily going into a place or the woods or a float tank, but he got what he needed from just bouncing a ball and just mentally took him to this place, which I found really fascinating.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier. When you're doing something like that, you have no choice but to be present.
Right.
If you bounce, first of all, I just want to point this out. I thought you were going to tell me, and this is where my mind went. When you saw the guy bouncing the ball, I would have been hype if you said, I snatched the ball from him on the next bounce. Like, that's where my thoughts went. But, like, when you're doing that, like, you have no choice but to be present. Otherwise, you're not catching that ball.
Right.
One-pointedness, again. Like, he's doing that, and that's all he could do. He's not worried about anything else. It's, once again, just the bouncing the ball, and these ideas come to mind.
But because he was there, the idea, like you just said, the ideas came to mind. Just like meditation is supposed to be all about silence, yet you have some of your most profound ideas and thoughts when you are just supposed to be engulfed in the silence. So I just found that so interesting because it's like, all right, if somebody's very opposed to meditation, take a tennis ball, walk around with it a little bit,
Yeah.
and see how you feel about it. I thought that was like a cool alternative.
What are the other alternatives? I'm trying to think, like, what else is there? Like, I was sharing before, like, I've been doing basketball. Like, you can't think when you're playing basketball.
I learned this from Tom Belayu. Hopefully, I'm not butchering his name. He calls it his own thing, thinkation. And basically, he says the 20 minutes after a hard workout is some of the most like gratifying time where you can really get deep thoughts in. It's just right after you've stimulated your body, you worked out hard. You know, you're in that post exercise kind of just like euphoria. And if you just take the principles of meditation, you put it to that 20-minute gap, you're going to think of ideas. And he puts out a pad and he just starts writing down thoughts. Just doesn't matter what it is. Like, don't stress yourself out. Like, it needs to be $1 billion right there. Just write down anything. Just start writing. Just start scribbling. But then I started utilizing that gap. Prior to that, I'm just thinking like post-workout shake, carbs, protein. But now I'm like, let me use this. I put myself through this workout, hopefully of one-pointedness, so I didn't talk to people left and right. Hopefully I'm zoned in. And then think about how your body feels after that. So another thing that if you like working out like I do, it's sort of like brushing my teeth, use that time and you can get a 2-for-1 special in that.
Yeah. What have been some of the thoughts that came to you after the workouts?
Well, based around clarity, there's a lot of look around ideas, prior to that. And I think after a good workout, you are more grounded, you're more clear. So you'll just see a situation more for what it is than for all the noise you put on it before or after. So an idea just becomes more crisp.
Yeah.
Less constantly rehearsing how it might go, just more like, let me do this. Also, because from a primal standpoint, after a workout, you feel on top of the world.
Yeah.
Think about it. You just lifted weights. You did whatever. You just unleashed like your inner warrior.
Yeah.
And now you're thinking from that mind versus the mind before it is maybe a little all over the place. So I would say I have more clarity around thoughts.
I get a lot done after a workout. So where I work out is about 25 minutes from my place, and I opt to walk home just about every single time. In that walk home, I get so much done. All the messages throughout the day that I've been like, I'll get to that later. I do it, and I do it with like joy. Like I actually enjoy responding to the messages instead of just like, oh, I gotta get back to this person. I forgot, it slipped my mind. Emails, I get it all done. I'm like, I got more done in this 25 minutes than I maybe did in necessarily like a few hours, just because like I'm on. And when you're on and you're like an unstoppable force, like you got to keep leaning into that. So I love the post-gym feeling. And, I can't say I necessarily write ideas down like Tom Belayu does, but there is something to be said after like, isn't it like after something comes to an end, a meditation, your thoughts, after maybe dreams, thoughts, after a workout, like after going through an experience, like just taking a little time to reflect or just lean into how you feel. I think it's so important because you could just do that and most people are like, all right, what's next? I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to do nothing. But that's where the magic happens, is right after these moments.
You nailed it. You just mentioned like giving yourself that time to reflect. Like right now, we just reflected on our float experience. But like in many situations, it's just easy to do what you just said, like move on to the next thing. Because in my mind, when I hear that, it's like, yeah, because the next thing is checking the box. Right. And it's like, even reflecting could be checking the box, but I think it's a little bit more productive than just like, whatever else. I think those moments of reflection, it's definitely something that I could do better without a doubt. And I'll be the first one to admit it. But yeah, I think you just gave me a really, really solid idea. It's like after the workout, after playing after the float, after the yoga, after this, after the date, after whatever it is, like take that minute to reflect as opposed to just like moving as we normally do, quote unquote normal, meaning like on autopilot.
It's the gold.
Yeah.
That 20 minutes after is the gold. Off of anything that we liked, like you said, we just go on to the next thing, the check the box theory. Like I was even thinking earlier today, like it would be so great to float before work or before a meeting, but now thinking about it, it's a check the box theory. Like give myself some time, even after a party or hanging out with my son or anything, like something that I think you really like and you are totally immersed in. That's not just the gift. The gift is right after it and thinking about how you feel. So the next time you can incorporate it from that standpoint. And that's your new baseline.
I think that's why I was floating for a good while. I was floating very late at night, as mentioned when we were there. I think that's why I was doing it, because there was nothing after. The only thing after was sleep. Right? Like sleep isn't really a check the box type of thing in my mind. Like as a high performing individual, I mean, sure, sleep is very important. I'm not downplaying that, but it's not like go to the meeting, get on the podcast, do a podcast, do this. Like you know, it's not do. It's more, I think sleep is more of a B thing.
It's not like don't forget to sleep.
Yeah. I mean,
it's going to happen one way or the other.
Yeah,
right.
I have to. I think we all have to, right? But now that I think about that, I think, yeah, I always felt like I was floating at night because after, as you guys saw earlier, I looked high as fuck. You know,
yes, you did.
I looked high as fuck, you know, and you just get into such a Zen state. I honestly don't feel like I would be productive in that state, you know, which is why I felt like doing it before bed was best. But
maybe less thoughts, better quality. That's what, like your dad said. I heard Gary Vee say the same thing. He was like, I don't meditate because I don't want to lose my edge. He was like, I like the way I am. I like that I'm a dog. And it's like, but if you do so, less thoughts. But what if, like, I heard Jeff Bezos say this, he's like, a really high paying executive officer gets paid 7 figures a year. If they make 3 good decisions a year, that's all I need to pay them. I'm paying them to just make 3 good decisions.
It is interesting because when you were sharing that, Ann, about your dad, I you know, the thought track in my head was, I feel like and you alluded to this, you know, I feel like meditation or the float therapy or whatever it is, you know, whatever gets you into that stillness state, I feel like that does amplify your edge because it tells you when to turn your edge on, right? We only have a certain amount of bandwidth in regards to our energy. And I feel like if our edge is constantly on, it's like your foot's constantly on the gas pedal of the car, right? Like your gas tank is going to empty, you know? So that brings up an interesting thought track too. It's like, that's still, you know, going back to what you were saying and, you know, maybe floating and moving into a meeting is beneficial because there's less thoughts. So yeah, I've never really looked at it that way. This conversation is obviously, you know, piquing interest. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also, like, going back to the 20-minute thing, it's really resonating with me because I think, you know, there's certain people that they live these really incredible lives and just they're one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. They're always constantly doing something, but they never seem to be like happy or satisfied. But I think what's missing is that little reflection point. And I think if you don't have the reflection point, you're just constantly going. You have to, it doesn't have to be a long pause, but you have to have that pause and kind of reflect back and be like, that was awesome. Like, I love that. And just like bask in it for just a bit and then go ahead and move on. If you want to do a billion things in a day, by all means, go for it. But that little time, I think, is the difference maker between people who are unsatisfied. And even though it's a huge buzzword in this day and age, I think people talk about it more than they actually are. But people who actually do have gratitude, if you are grateful, you have to have that time of reflection. Otherwise, you're just constantly going. You're not like, you're not taking in the moment and you're not processing it because you're living it, but you're not processing it afterwards. And I think that little, like, those few minutes can make somebody who is maybe feels unsatisfied, and it can be like the catalyst for them to being a happier person or a more fulfilled person.
I don't know if we're ever taught how to reflect, which makes me think I feel like people don't do things because they've never been taught how to do it. And right, it's so out of the norm for them. It's so foreign or whatever term you want to put to it. So, like, for example, I was never taught how to reflect. I don't even know if how I reflect is the most effective way of reflecting. But, like, let's go down that track. Like, what is reflection?
I was just going to say, you brought this to top of mind, integration. So reflection for me is integrating what I've learned into what I do. If I'm not integrating, well, then I'm just literally watching the same movie over and over.
Mm-hmm.
There's no part two. It's just always part one, part one, part one. And it's like, that's what we do by the check the box theory. So like, whatever we just did, think about it, process it, integrate it into what you do going forward. So you just keep compounding, like I said before, and you have a new baseline. For me, that's the process on anything, is how to integrate what you know, whether it's from somebody else or from yourself or from your dog or from anywhere, into your life going forward. So that's how it is for me.
The integration is huge. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you're not integrating, right, it goes back to, we said this maybe even years ago on a roundtable, like the whole process of change. So yeah, you guys got me thinking right now. I'm not sure how much I actually reflect to integrate. I think I reflect to reminisce. I don't know. I'm just trying to think about like what I do.
I know with me and with other friends as well, we mean well by this. A lot of times when we tell stories over and over, it's reflection.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing it because it makes us feel good. It's sort of like these high school quarterback stories of when we threw the game-winning touchdown, and you want to go back to it. And it's good. It is good. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you always on that track of the yesteryear's home run, like if Aaron Judge is always thinking about last year's home run, like this year, he's going to tell himself he doesn't need to be good because last year was good. So like, I think about it in terms of that as well. I'm still navigating that.
Couldn't he also identify as, I'm a guy that does that, so I'm going to continue to do that because that's who I am? So he's actually making that not part of his past identity, but his current identity, you could say.
Yeah. So as I said, I'm still navigating it, but as long as you don't make it a reason to not be your best self in the future because of something in the past. Like if Matt said, I did 300 episodes, so if my next one sucks, it doesn't matter. Like,
yeah,
it's you want to integrate it so the 301 is spectacular.
I think Gary Vee talks about this, and I don't know exactly what he says, but something along the lines of what you were just getting at is like, it's if I sat here and was talking about, hitting 2 home runs, playing Little League Baseball for the District 26 championship. Like he talks about that, but I don't know exactly what he says, and I really wish that I did, because it's along this this talk track. Did you guys see that piece of content from him?
I didn't.
No?
It's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
There's so much
there's
infinity content.
There's so much.
Yeah.
Infinity content is a fact. Sometimes I look at it, like I keep a little note in my phone, and I just, continuously refresh with ideas. And I got to a point last month where I'm like, Matt, instead of creating the content as you refresh the list, how about you click pause on publishing content, even for this pod? Like, even that's still true for this pod too. I was like, click pause on the publishing so that you can build up. So you can like build up, episodes to not publish, but like publish in a different way. I give credit to Gary, man.
To make more of what you have.
Holy shit.
Yeah. No, he's on fire. He's just putting out so much content, and other people too, but they learned it from him. He's putting out so much that if he puts out, I'm making it up, 300 pieces of content a week, and 299 fail, but there's one good one, that's all that matters. His actual best piece of content, I don't know if you ever saw this, wasn't business, and it wasn't personal development. It was what he likes to eat prior to speaking on stage, which is blueberries. He put out a piece of content on blueberries, and the thing went viral. People are like, I like blueberries too.
Yeah.
That's a big community of us out there.
We overthink.
There's, I don't know if you guys know, I don't follow Gary. Actually, I follow him on Twitter. We follow each other there, but not on, I don't follow him on Instagram. But one thing that I am noticing when his reels pop up on the Explore page, he's talking a lot about emotions.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He's talking a lot about feelings, and it's interesting to see his shift go from hustle pornish to, like whatever this is now, like this new evolution of Gary where he's incorporating like fulfillment and gratitude and happiness and this and that or whatever else. Maybe it was there a little bit, but now I definitely see it more.
Well, he's at the forefront of a lot of this stuff, and especially in the past, right? Like, he's a trailblazer. But what happens is when he shifts to a certain topic, then there's like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that are like, "Oh, we're doing this now," and a lot of times it comes up as like disingenuous. He's like, "Oh, he's doing this now. Now I'm going to shift my focus to match what he's doing, what's popular." So you've had this podcast for how long now? 5.5, 6 years?
5.5, yeah.
You've been talking about this for forever. The people that try to do that just because Gary's doing it,
yeah,
it ain't going to work for them. That's not going to last too long. But if it's something near and dear to your heart and you have staying power, you've been talking about this for 5.5, 6 years. How many people have the capacity to keep talking about something that's just like really not true to themselves? So what's going to happen now is you're going to see so much of that, because I see people regurgitating what he's saying in their own way, like him probably more than anyone else.
I'm curious. I'm guilty of this, and I'll put that out there. Have you guys, and this goes to show the impact that's been had, have you guys done something because Gary's done it?
I have.
I have.
I'm sure I have.
Not in terms of what he speaks about, but in terms of like a style, like an aesthetic. I mean, I'm talking 5-6 years ago, because he, as you said, he is a trailblazer. He understands what's going to move the needle in terms of like social culture. He's a great student of social culture. He understands what's next. Like, he called it when TikTok, I think, was called Musically. He called it.
Yep.
Everybody was like, "This guy's crazy." Like, you don't have to shake your ass and dance on camera. Like, this is going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Everybody said it's not going to be. It became huge. So I did in that sense. I think it's cool to take inspiration and then make it your own. So I did in that sense.
Yeah, I did too, but it wasn't necessarily a piece of advice that he had. It was more leading by by example. So, I was starting my company, Rare Cut, working medical device, and I had a lot of little side projects I was doing too. And I'm like, how am I going to find the time in the day? And then I see this guy doing a zillion different things and like not complaining about it. And so for me, that's what I got from him. Like, this guy he's everywhere. He's always at a speaking engagement. He's always making content. He always has meetings. He's very efficient. But for me, it kind of was like a reality check of like, dude, people are doing it at a much larger scale and they're doing even more. So like, it was just a reminder of like, not just to keep going, but it put things in perspective for me.
I wonder if Gary ever is still.
Probably not.
You don't think so?
I don't know, man.
I don't. The interesting thing, and I don't want to wrongfully speak, because you have to live in that man's shoes. I respect him immensely, but is he happy? That's step number one. And if he was probably here, he would say, "Yeah, I'm doing what I love every single day."
Yeah.
So I believe he is. But outside of the work environment, does that translate? It's interesting. I won't speak for him. It's just interesting. These larger than life figures that, let's say, you look up to.
Mm-hmm.
What is their life like holistically? Would you trade places with them? He
said that he had, without getting the numbers accurate, he was like, I have 300 ideas a day, and I put 3 of them into action per year, and that's what makes me happy. So apparently, his happiness revolves around that not being still lifestyle. Creation.
I mean, that's what we're called to do. So, but in different buckets. So like when we see him and he's killing it in one bucket, like really, really killing it, it's like curious how the other buckets are playing out, because we only got one shot at this. So we kill it in this one bucket. How do we feel about the other buckets? Are we missing out on that? And to make use of these other ones, do we have to pull back on this one? It's interesting. It's a very interesting topic to think about. And I think there's 1,000,001 different ways you could go about it. No one is right, but it's whatever works for you.
Yeah. This episode is going from 3 guys, 1 tank to 4 guys, 1 tank. Gonna have Gary on the thumbnail too. Good old Gary. But going back to the floating stuff, do you guys feel like there was any particular, I'm gonna be one of those influencey guys now, download that you got in the tank this time around?
As I said earlier, gratitude came at the very end. I think it would have been heightened if it was even a little longer, or maybe I settled in faster. But gratitude, just the beauty of what it is, just right now, just health, family, love. Like, it's easy to dismiss it sometimes with the thoughts of the next. So gratitude came up for me in a big way.
What about you?
Yeah, for me, and I've discussed this on the show before, this was my takeaway from vacation last year, when I was just like, if you have a scale from 0 to 10, 0 is living all the way in the past, 10 is living all the way in the future, like, where do you fall on that scale? And in my experience in my life, I've been like an 8 a lot, or an 8.5, very future oriented. And then as I've matured and done, the work, I've become more center, and the goal is to be at, a 5, right? If that's perfect, if that's where we want to be, if that's presence. Mm-hmm. And that's why we go on vacations a lot, is to get to 5, right? That's why we do certain things. That's why we go for a run. That's why we do the things we do, is to get to 5. So for me, after about those 15 minutes we discussed, I was at that 5 for about 45 minutes, and that's all I wanted. And I was happy there. And I was like, I could start thinking about like future-oriented things, which I did in the beginning for the first 15 minutes. But right after that, I was just like, this is where I want to be. I'm here. I'm happy to be here. And that was my big takeaway, was getting to 5 and being present.
Do you feel like that scale that you reference is like a sliding scale? Like, move into the future, move into the past, move into the present. Like, do you feel like you have to be in one place, like always at a 5?
No. I'm just saying, if 5 just means you are currently present where you're at. That's all that means.
Yeah.
Just means if you are where your ass is, right? If you are right here, then that is pure presence. And oftentimes we'll get glimpses of those moments. Like, you'll be on vacation, you'll be walking down the beach, and you'll be like, this is life. Like, there's no other thought really matters right now except the now. Yeah. So I actually got that from the tank today.
Oh, I love that.
What about for you?
I think overall, and this has kind of been the theme of pretty much everything I've been doing, especially like the sound healing I did last week as well. I feel like it is the moments of stillness are leading to, using the word, a reflection of the growth that's transpired probably since, I want to say, 2020. It's not to say that I haven't grown, before that, but I just feel like there's been another level that's been hit. And one of the thoughts that I had, specifically not in the float tank, but during the sound healing, was how it kind of revolving around, if you feel like you're being tempted to operate from your lower self, like temptation from the devil, temptation from whatever. I mean, it's safe to say, like, if you believe in a greater power, you have to know that a power of evil also exists. I don't want to say of the same magnitude of God or whatever the case may be, but like, if you feel like you're receiving temptation, that is a sign of your greatness, because that temptation is only coming through to hold you back from accessing that. Right? So like that's kind of been the theme. It's like, not that I'm experiencing temptation all the time, but just like a reminder of the greatness that's unfolding, a reminder of the growth that you're seeing. Unless you zoom out, maybe you don't see it. And these moments have been that, so same thing with today, just like being able to at least be aware enough that I'm latching on to some thoughts and like going down the rabbit hole, and then pausing, pulling myself back out, letting that one go. Like, that's growth in itself, So like, even from a zoomed out perspective, like looking at things like that and really acknowledging them, like that's really been my theme, like over the past couple of weeks. And it's been pretty dope to see,
So when you go to sound therapy later, what are you hoping to get from that?
I don't know if I am, to be honest. All I know is that after this, which I'm sure we're wrapping up in a couple minutes, like after this, I need to eat.
I need a coffee, really.
I thought you were going to say you're going to knock.
Yeah.
No. I need to eat. I need to eat.
Oh, I need a cold brew, dude.
A cold brew?
Oh, man. That flotation, that's no joke. I'm super relaxed. I think
that's your brand. I've never seen you without a coffee in your hand.
It's also true.
Or talking about Greece.
I always have. Actually, it's funny because I posted a picture on Instagram the other day, and I didn't even realize that someone goes, "You're holding a coffee every time I see you." I guess that's my accessory. I don't know.
You said this very early in the podcast that like meditation is different for different people.
Mm-hmm.
So a meditation to one guy might be driving in his Rolls Royce. To another guy might be a small piece of dark chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
It might be
Bouncing a ball.
It might be a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a real estate mentor that I had one time, and he talked about when he would go door knocking, he stumbled across this guy's house. He was 90 years old. He was talking about selling, and the guy invited him in for a cup of coffee, and he just said that the greatest part of his day, his meditation, was just a warm cup of coffee and just enjoying it in his mug, sitting in his chair.
Mm-hmm.
That's his meditation. Like that's his point of groundedness, of that 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know, so as I think about that and we reflect on that, like there's so many little things that are the Rolls Royces of our lives that we will integrate going forward.
Yeah. We have to come up with a new idea for the next roundtable. Did the card game, did the float therapy. I was telling him,
I love the card game.
We still got a lot of the card game left. That
I
was
say we
heavy.
keep going.
That was heavy.
Yeah.
I'm curious for the people that are tuning in on YouTube if there's any ideas for what you want to see from the roundtables. I think that would be cool too, just like source ideas. I'm definitely down to do the card game again. I think we only did
6?
7. Was it
No,
6?
one was omitted because it was a kind of a repeat.
Yeah, it was
we
the
did
same
2
question,
each.
really. Oh,
Could be a
did we do
Q&A.
2 each?
Or did we do 3?
No, I didn't do 3. I know I didn't.
I thought we did 2 each.
I was last.
Maybe
so
2 or 3.
I think we started on the 3rd. I think it was 2, 4, 6. That's why I'm saying 7.
Listen, I'm personally, I don't know how you felt about it. I loved it. It's just because we didn't know what was going to be thrown at us. It's just like curveball at 3. Like you don't know what.
Cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Cool.
So I'm certainly down for one of those.
Yeah,
again.
no, that's definitely another idea. But I wanna brainstorm just to see if there's anything else.
Well, we do have a challenge coming up one day.
What challenge?
The seltzer
I don't
challenge.
even view it as a challenge, brother. That's not even a challenge.
We'll see about that.
Funny enough, I was gonna bring the box today. So to put everyone on, Ant doesn't believe that I can identify Hal's Black Cherry Seltzer from other black cherry seltzers.
In a blind taste study,
in a blind
if there's
taste
5 different brands, they'll be moved and in no particular order because I don't want you to be like, oh, he put it here because he thinks it'll be at random.
I'm with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I had the box. The box isn't big enough for 5, so I have to get a different box. But is that a part of the pod?
I think it'd be. Why not? Why not?
No, I definitely want to do that too. But yeah, we'll brainstorm. Just for everyone out there that's tuned into this, just know that more is coming. A lot more is coming. A lot of fun stuff in the works. I'm trying to think if there's like anything else that we could do like float wise. I mean, like, do we do it after like a sound healing? Do we do it after like? It's kind of the same thing to an extent.
Yeah, it would be integrating, I think, the place and the guests there as well. Like even like just like a dope trip. Like we did like a Wim Hof thing, and I think
that
would be
making
great.
it a lifestyle podcast as well, like an experiential podcast, would be dope.
Like a real fireside chat,
like
an actual fireside,
yeah,
campfire.
And even if you want to keep it easy and light, like having the cell phone up there going live and people asking questions.
Yeah,
That'd be cool too.
That's it could be
We can
right
go
before,
live.
it could be before, it could be after. And
I like that idea. That's cool.
You got 20 questions. Here's the top 4.
Yeah, we can go live. I'm down with going live.
Something experiential.
I'm
would
trying
be,
to think.
Would be dope.
I'm trying to think.
Think about it.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we're gonna do ayahuasca on the pod. No, I'm only kidding.
I don't know if we'd make it through.
Without puking.
Without puking.
Yeah, I haven't felt called to that, so I'm just fucking around. But any last words, boys, before we wrap this?
Honestly,
Everyone needs a
No,
nap.
I'm so.
Everyone needs a nap.
I never not have something to say. This is one of the few moments I don't.
your stomach didn't growl this podcast.
That's actually true.
That's because you ate a nice vegan tofu
It's
truffle butter wrap.
only because
With
I'm fasting for Greek Easter on Fridays and Wednesdays. That's the only reason. And I ate right before the pod because I didn't want that to be our 4th guest on this show.
You know what I was thinking? You didn't bring up Greece. I brought it up.
You brought it up. I heard it. I was yeah. I was like, all right,
I
counts.
brought it
Still
up
counts.
for you.
Still counts.
Oh man. All right, everyone. Appreciate you all tuning in for this. Like I said, we have so much more in the works for each and every one of you that's out there that's been supporting the show. A lot more stuff in person, experiential stuff, new guests hopping on, old guests coming back. The list goes on. Feel free to continuously check us out on YouTube where all of this content's published, or, if you're over there on, the Spotify's, the Apples of the world, make sure that you're subscribing to YouTube. You can find everything in the show notes for each and every one of our shows. Until next time, everyone, be blessed. Peace.